Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Episode 67 of The Human Experience is Amey's story. Unfortunately, like many of us, Amey's life was inextricably changed because of a trauma that she walked through. Nearing 50 and navigating through the complexities of her marriage, motherhood, and her career, Amey's vision for her future took a drastic turn when her husband decided to end their marriage. Though it was a time of mourning and loss, Amey's divorce would ultimately be the catalyst for her greatest adventures. Amey realized that she had lost her identity, and she was determined to use this life-altering change to discover who she was. Now, Amey empowers women from all walks of life to reclaim their identities with courage and determination, with the knowledge that your best self is your most authentic self. This episode, as you can most likely hear from the traffic going on all around us, was recorded in the center of London, England, in a public library with very old windows. I hope you feel like you're right there with us, listening to the sounds of London go by.
Amey. So we're in London right now, but you are not from London. You're literally here for the day before you leave on a fabulous vacation. But you are from where?
I'm in the Dallas area. Okay.
So you flew, you must be so tired right now. I'm catching her at her most delusional, I think.
We flew to New York for one night. And then we flew and landed a couple of hours ago here.
Oh, that's good that you did it. You broke it up a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. So, Amey, we're here for your story. So I'm super excited. I read a little bit about you on your website just to kind of familiarize myself with what you do and who you are. But generally speaking, when I ask people, what's your story? That's truly like a, what does that mean to you question? Because I know it's like very open-ended and big.
It is open-ended and it can be big. Basically, I am just an average Joe who was married for 29 years. I got a divorce. And at the beginning of that, I was devastated. I was hurt. I was depressed. I was angry. I went through all of the emotions. And after I did that, I kind of did some self-reflection, kind of did some soul searching, kind of did a lot of things. And then I decided to write in the book, Shine Your Light. And when I did that, I decided, I have a story. And not only that, I think I can help people with that. So I kind of decided that my message and telling my story and helping other women who have either been through that or who are in situations where they're empty nesters and they're like, now what? What do I do now? My kids are not needing me anymore.
Yeah. It's a long time to be married.
It was.
And then to have it end. I am divorced myself. I was married for a lot less time than that. But there is a grief, a trauma that comes with divorce, no matter what your situation. But did you have kids?
I do.
Okay.
And they were adults at that time. So I've been divorced for 4 years now.
Okay.
My daughter's 32. My son is 28. So they were adults.
Yeah. So you talk a little bit on your website about identity and losing your identity. So what was it about your marriage what was your marriage like, I guess, for the 29 years?
It had its up and down. We raised our kids. They both played sports. So we traveled the world with their sports, or U.S. So my husband coached. I was team mom, booster club president, all of the things. So I lived vicariously through them. And I was 19 when I got married. So I hadn't really experienced much in the world.
Yeah. That's a big thing. Mm-hmm. Did you get married so young? Was there a reason you got married so young?
You know, That's a really good question. We thought we were in love.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in love. Let's do this. Little did we know, right?
Hey, I mean, there is no magic formula here, so it could have been the perfect time to get married for you. But it is interesting, I think, especially for women, that in certain circles, getting married young is a huge thing. It's your aspiration, right? Is to get married as quickly as possible, start having your family. And there's nothing wrong with the idea of that. But the problem then becomes, well, do you know, who are you? Right? Because you as a child is different from you as an adult, and you as a person is different from you as a mother and a wife. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you did you find yourself finding your value and your identity in your functions of mother and wife?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I took great pride in that. I adored my children. That was the most important thing to me, was to be the best mom that I could possibly be, to be present at everything they ever did. And just that was where I found my value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense in a lot of ways. And there's nothing wrong with, raising children is an incredibly difficult job and something that it's a lifelong thing, right? You don't just stop when your children grow up. They're still your children. But I do think that we can sometimes have an issue in losing identity, especially as women, when that's kind of our end goal, right? Okay, I became a mom. I'm not supposed to want anything else in life. I'm not supposed to want to do anything else or be anything else. This is my highest calling. And again, it is an incredibly high calling. I don't want to diminish that at all. But then what happens when your children leave and your children have their own lives and start their own lives? So yeah, I think that's a really important conversation to be having. So you're married for 29 years. What's kind of the catalyst that makes you walk away?
It wasn't my decision, and I'll leave it there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So huge upset then. You're in a 29-year-long marriage. You have grown children, and you kind of get thrown off your rocker then of what your life is going to look like. Suddenly when you're looking in the future, it's very open-ended.
Very.
So what kind of was your journey to then becoming, or your journey from finding this out that your marriage was ending, to how did you work through that?
Well, I moved into an apartment, and this was the beginning of the pandemic. So I was alone by myself, which is not necessarily the best recipe for, happy times.
No.
I was very depressed. It was very tough. But I also took that opportunity, as I was kind of coming out of the angry, depressed phase, take the opportunity to just think, to pray, to meditate, to listen to music, just to kind of, figure out what I wanted. It was funny because I was so used to cooking for tons of people. And I'm going, okay, now what do I even like? If I want to cook for just me, I'm not cooking. I don't want this. I don't want that. What am I going to cook? What do I like? What do I want to eat the most? And then how do I cook for one person, which I still can't do, but
I feel you there.
But that's okay. I freeze it now, so it's okay. But it's just finding all of those little things out that you don't think of when you're just in the moment. You're just raising your kids, you're cooking dinner, you're doing all of the things, and then all of a sudden that stops. It's quiet. There's no one around but you to make the noise in your apartment. I listened to a lot of music, and I went through quite a variety. I would, listen to a lot of praise and worship music for a while and really soak that in. And then I would listen to some 80s rock music, and I would walk really hard to the beat of the 80s rock music. So it was a good time, though. It gave me a chance to explore the idea of going and listening to live music, and something that I really enjoyed. I was like, let's just find it everywhere. I'll go to this concert, that, and I never met a stranger, So I had a lot of friends that were married, and I would hang out with them, go out and do things with them. And I didn't mind being the third wheel.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly difficult when you're forced into this situation, right? Of having to get to know yourself. I think it's something that is valuable for all of us to do, and is something that we should be working on in and out of relationships.
Yes.
But if you are suddenly confronted with you and only you, it can be a very jarring experience to try to come to terms with that. Because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, but I will say for myself, going through divorce, immediately afterwards, I found that I was not who I thought I was. I was kind of a shell of a person. And I didn't really like myself. And so I really had to work on figuring out what had changed, why I had changed, and who I was going to be, if I was going to stay in this place or if I was going to move forward. So you're talking about divorce, it's a lot of, it's trauma, but it's grief. And grief is a really hard thing to move through. There's a lot of stages of grief. You've kind of made a little bit of mention of them with your 80s angry rock music. His anger is a big part of grief.
Yes, it was. It was very much so.
Yeah. So I guess, what was it like to move through the grief of it? What was your grief journey like? And how did you reconcile that? And how did you keep you still have kids while you're going through this. It's not just you. It's not just, I know your kids are grown, but I'm assuming they still are, very much in touch with you and going through this as well to a certain degree. So what was it like to move through grief? And did you realize that that was the journey you were going through?
I think in the beginning, I didn't realize it. I think I was just hurt. As you say, the rug was pulled out from under you.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, wow, what just happened? Like a sucker punch in the gut, sort of. And I just kind of cried a lot. I spent a lot of time I can't even tell you how many tears I cried. I think I was like, I'm done. There's no more tears to cry. And then I was angry. Mm-hmm. I was really angry. And I probably said some pretty hurtful things, to him or just in general. I felt angry inside. And, it just took some time. I think one of the things that really helped me was serving others. Mm-hmm. I met someone, she does a homeless event where it's a haircut event every month. And so I would go and serve there every month. And just serving other people, to me, it made all the difference, like on the inside of me. I couldn't serve someone else and show them love if I had hate in my heart. So it just kind of helped me in that process a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great, it's a great reminder, because it is a hugely beneficial thing for us to serve other people, right? And in any capacity, mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be homelessness or whatever, but to take, I really think what it comes down to is getting outside of your own space, mm-hmm. right? You are not the most important thing in the world in that moment. That's right. You're doing something for somebody else. You are not the center of your own universe. And it helps to be able to
it's
pull
huge.
yourself
It does. It helps.
out of that. Mm-hmm. So, I think grief is like death. We talk about divorce being like death. Grief is like death, even if death is not the catalyst of your grief.
Yes.
Because you lose so much.
Yes.
And it's all of the sudden, right? The people and places that were once familiar to you now become strange, and you're really not allowed to access them anymore. And so, especially as somebody that was married for as long as you were, I can imagine that abruptness of coming to an end is just such a difficult thing to kind of come to terms with. And there's almost like it's not fair aspect of it, right? Like, I didn't want this, so why do I have to have the consequences of this?
Right.
So yeah, I would love for you to talk about identity like in more detail, and kind of when you found yourself, or when you realized that you had lost your identity, what that meant to you, and what your journey was to kind of coming into your identity.
So it's, as I was saying, about learning what you like, learning the foods you like, learning what you like to cook or what you like to do. That kind of started that. And when I was alone in my apartment going, okay, well, what am I cooking, or going to the store, or little things like that, that's when I realized it's like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I want, what I like, or anything. So once I got through the anger, once I got through a lot of the grief, the pain, the crying all the time, and realizing I'm lost, who am I? And also because I got married when I was 19, I hadn't really experienced a whole lot. I hadn't really gone a lot of places. We traveled a lot in the U.S. with our kids' sports, but I hadn't traveled abroad until 2018 was the first time I had gone outside of the U.S., like, other than a cruise, to Jamaica or Mexico or something like that. But that was my first trip going with my mom outside of the U.S. So I discovered that, and that was right before everything really fell apart. So 2018 and 2019, when I traveled, it was like it opened up a whole new Pandora's box. I thought, wow, I've never seen the world, and this is fascinating, the architecture and all the things that I just came to love that.
Yeah.
So I really started to embrace traveling and said, I'm going somewhere every year. I don't care where it is, but I'm going to explore somewhere new every year. So that helped in the whole identity thing, and realizing that was a part of me, that I enjoyed doing that. So sometimes when I talk to ladies in groups, I tell younger women that if there's something that you enjoy doing, if it's kayaking, if it's knitting, something simple, if you're a runner, when you get married or when you have kids, keep doing that. Because that's the one thing that I think, not only when I was 19, I didn't know really what I was about or what I liked or what I wanted to do, but then I'm into this marriage and raising my family, living vicariously through my children. And when you get out, then you don't know what do I do? What do I like? Right. And I think young women, and there's nothing wrong with putting your heart and soul into your family and your marriage and everything, but you need that one little thing, whatever that is. And I didn't have that then when I got married. So I didn't have an identity then.
Yeah.
So I really tell younger women to always, keep that one thing. And then when you get married, make sure you're having a date night, or make sure you're having time away. It's not just always family stuff, because you'll lose your relationship with your spouse too. And a lot of women, I think, when they get older and they become empty nesters, you're kind of in that same situation too. I have a couple of clients like that where the kids are grown and they don't need them anymore. And you look at your spouse and go, well, I don't know if I even like you. Yeah. And so, I have clients at both ends of the spectrum that way. So finding my identity and realizing I didn't have one, and then just kind of exploring things. It took me, let's try this. Yeah, I don't like that. Let's do this. Or let's travel. Oh, I really love that. And you start doing little things that, as I say sometimes, set your soul on fire. What is it that sets your soul on fire? I started doing crafts for a little while, and I really got into the crafting thing, and it really it made me feel good. I was creating something, and, I would sell them at craft shows or something, but that wasn't even the point if I sold any or not. It was just the creative part. Yeah. So once I got into this book project last year, that's when I realized even more about myself. I think it was more therapeutic. It was kind of the end of my therapy, writing the book, because it took us almost a whole year to do that, just the chapter. And learning more about myself through writing my story, and learning that this is what I'm called to do. This is where my passion is to help women either get unstuck or find your identity or help them kind of figure out where to go next. Because I think a lot of times people, they do get stuck. It's like, now, what do I do now?
Sure.
Well, sometimes you just need a kick, or sometimes you need to realize, let's be grateful. Today, I'm grateful because I woke up. Today, I'm grateful I'm in London. This is great. Whatever it is, be grateful. I was grateful for my little apartment that was down by my office. I didn't have to commute, and it was really close, and it was a cute little apartment. Wasn't what I had envisioned from moving, from a 3,000 square foot home in the suburbs, but
Sure.
But it was cute, and it was the best place for my healing journey to begin. So I think those are some of the things that I tell people first when you don't know what your identity, figure out, hey, I don't have an identity. And if you don't, let's start here.
Yeah.
Figure out something, try new things, be open-minded, try things that set your soul on fire. If you do something and it starts to bubble up something in you, then that's where you're supposed to be. Whether it's serving, whether it's traveling, whatever it is, that's where you're supposed to be, because that's what's igniting you.
Absolutely. And I love that you have first of all, sorry, I have to kind of put a caveat in here because we are in the middle of London, in like a hugely busy part of London. We are inside, but it doesn't sound like it sometimes. We are in a public library, and I'm guessing the building is just very old and the windows are not very soundproof. But you are hearing a lot of buses go by is what you're hearing. So
that's great.
Bear with us as we do this in the middle of London. But back to identity. I love that, you mentioned hold on to the things that you love, but also get to know new parts of yourself, because you are a constantly evolving creature, right? Like we are always changing. And so what I liked when I was 18 is not the same thing I liked at 25 is not the same thing I like at 35, right? So, allow yourself the room to discover yourself and to find things about yourself that you like. And I think it's incredibly important to, this is going to sound kind of weird, but to be in love with yourself.
Yes, I say that. And date yourself.
I love that. Yeah.
Date yourself. It's okay if you go to the local bar and sit up there and have a fancy steak and a glass of wine by yourself. It's okay, because you're going on a date and you just sit there and you savor the moment. Talk to strangers. I never meet a stranger. And so that's a great way to meet people.
Yeah.
Or if you want to date in your bathtub, get your glass of wine and put some bubbles in there and just relax.
Yeah.
Shut out all the noise.
I think it is a sign of just, I don't necessarily want to say maturity, even though I do think that, but there is a certain onus that comes when you know yourself, right? And there's a confidence that comes with that. And so, like, I have done a lot of solo travel in the past couple of years, and I look at some other women that are doing solo travel and I'm like, they are so far ahead of me. Like what they're doing is so like, it's amazing, but I'm like, that terrifies me. But then I look at what I've done and I'm like, but people think that about me too, And I will say that doing this, which has set my soul on fire, right, has given me a confidence that I've never had before. And so I think it is hugely important to know who you are, what you like, and what makes you feel alive.
Yes, absolutely. I did. In the very beginning, I was also very insecure, very, I won't say body shaming, but I didn't feel good about how I looked. I felt like I wasn't beautiful. There was some sort of reason why I ended up in this situation. It wasn't true, but that was the mindset that I had at that moment. And I remember I was in my apartment. I met my realtor when I was in my apartment and ended up buying my first home right before I turned 50. First time ever owning a home by myself.
Congratulations.
And his wife was a boudoir photographer. And I was able to go and do that. Well, at the time I didn't have, I thought years ago I would do that for my husband. I thought, well, now is the time to do it for yourself. Mm-hmm. So I did. And it was the most interesting thing, the most tasteful photographer. She is absolutely wonderful. And I did it, and they do your hair and makeup and whatnot. And I'm looking at these pictures when I'm reviewing them. I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? She's like, no, that's you. And although I was kind of stiff because I'd never really done that before, it was like, wow, I look okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with me, physical appearance, even though I really thought there was for a while. And then later on, I became friends with her, and I did a 1-year anniversary shoot. And I make a really big deal about being authentic, and this is my authentic hair. And so for this photo shoot, I did my authentic hair. It was like night and day, the amount of confidence that I had gained in myself just in the 1.5 years after being divorced. I felt so much better about myself. I felt alive. I just was it's kind of a whimsical kind of thing. And it was just fun. And I was just being me. And it was great. Just the authenticity of that. And I would encourage any woman, anytime, to just do that. And I have the book. It's, next to my bed. It doesn't belong to anyone. And the first photo shoot, the pictures are on my wall. No one else has them. I do occasionally post them on my blog, different ones that are, with like rock star type of, motif or whatever. But I did it for myself. I didn't do it for someone else. I did it to gain some confidence in myself.
I love that so much. And I love that you could visibly see your shift in confidence.
It was huge.
I think it's so true. And I have seen pictures of myself from different time periods and can notice things that maybe not somebody else wouldn't be able to notice. But I love that you did that for yourself. I think it is fabulous. And I love that you did it twice. I love that you did it twice.
It was great. It was great. And it was like night and day. It was so funny.
That is fantastic. So I want to know a little bit more about the book. How did that come about? Because you wrote a chapter, you said, in a compilation
book.
Okay. So yeah, how did that come about?
So it's the third and last book in a series, the Light Beamer series, and an executive at my office wrote in the second one. And she and I were talking, and I've become really close with her. She's a wonderful human. So we started talking about her story and her story in the book. And I said, well, we have a lot of similarities. We have a lot of different things that we've gone through in our lifetimes. And I said, maybe I have a story to tell. So I met with April Pertwee. She's the leader and organizer of the Light Beamers book series, and decided that I was going to write a chapter in the book. It was the greatest process because we had an accountability partner, we had editors, we had people come in and kind of speak and tell us how to do our bio and all the different things over a course of, 8 months. Wow. And so we would meet weekly, then we would meet monthly, turn your first draft in. In fact, our first draft was due like 3 days before my mom and I left for Italy last year. I was like, and so my mom and I had our first call. My mom has a chapter in this book as well, which is very interesting. And she has a very interesting life story. So my mom and I are in Italy, and we took our first call with the group in Italy. So I was like, might as well.
I love it. Yes.
Just take it. So it was great. That was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun having my mom in the book, telling her story. She has a very, very interesting story as well. So I decided that I was going to write a chapter, and it was just therapeutic. It was really therapeutic to actually get your words on paper, to have someone else read them, get their opinion and how they feel and how that makes them feel about it. And then realizing that's the whole point of telling your story, is to be able to help someone else. Someone else can pick that up and read it and be like, oh, wow, I'm going through that too. Or, oh, this is how she got to the other side. And a lot of times it's not necessarily about what, the muck and the myrrh, more or less. It's about how you overcame that. It's how you got through that, how you got to the other side of your crap.
Yeah. No, that's very true. The event itself is one small blip, but the fallout from it is much longer lasting. And healing is a journey. It takes a long time. And I think the other thing too with healing is that, you have the fallout, which is what you initially seek healing for, right? This happened. It has affected my life in a negative way. I need to find healing for it. But when you start walking down that road, you realize there's a lot more there than I thought there was. Oh, yeah.
Oh, lots and lots and lots. Oh, yes.
And it's not just this one event.
No.
It's years and years of things that have kind of led up to this. And I think I say a lot that you don't have to go through trauma to learn life lessons and to kind of know yourself in a very intimate way. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's how people come to this place. And so while I don't wish it on anybody, there is something to the opening that comes very against your will, but the flaying open that comes when you walk through traumatic events.
Yes, absolutely. And I say that all the time, that it wasn't something that I asked for. It wasn't something that I really wanted, but man, has it been a blessing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think too, that the conversation around that we can be a little more nuanced with it, right? Because I think sometimes there's a danger in saying, oh, you have found the good in a bad situation. Well, maybe, but let's make sure we don't deny justice to people that have gone through terrible things, right? Let's make sure we aren't, putting on a pedestal this trauma that somebody has gone through. What they have done after the fact is the thing that makes them courageous in spite of the trauma that they walked through. Right. Because nobody needs more amplification of their own trauma.
Right. I do also tell people too, part of all of it is navigating life's challenges, because, I started dating, getting into the dating world and all the things that come with that, and making mistakes and like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Or, all of those things. Give yourself a little grace.
Yeah.
Give yourself a little grace through all of that. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to pick the wrong person, or you're going to, because you haven't done this. I hadn't done this in 29 years. I was out of practice, a little out of practice.
You had not dated as an adult. I mean, truly,
right. So it was a little different, and it was like, oh, well, that guy was a real bonehead, or, and the dating scene. Oh my gosh. From the time that I was married, you talk about online and all the things. This is so foreign. This is completely foreign. But at the time, I was going to a church that was more of a ministry church. So I wasn't going to meet someone there just by nature of the type of church that it was, which it was perfect for me at that time. It just wasn't where I was going to meet someone. And I didn't want to hang out at a bar. So that wasn't really going to happen either. So, okay, now how do you meet people? And then you discover the online dating, which... It's a shit show, really.
Yes, it is.
It really is. And oddly enough, the person that I met that I'm currently dating, that almost a year now, we just happened to meet because we were out with friends and he was out with friends, and we just happened to meet. So I didn't meet him through online dating either. So it was great.
Honestly, I love that. That actually gives me hope.
Yeah.
Because
when you least expect it.
Right. The online dating thing is just a mess.
Yes, it is.
A mess.
People will lie, and people will, they'll put a photo of themselves up, and you go and meet them for a lunch, and you're like, whoa, that's not you. Wait a minute.
And there's just such an attitude around it too that's so I don't know, there's so many options, and I definitely believe in having a mindset of abundance, and that scarcity mindset is a terrible thing for ourselves. We don't do well with scarcity mindset. We make really bad decisions when we think, when we're desperate.
Right.
PSA. But just this idea that it's just too easy, to swipe and to click and to message and whatever. And it takes a lot of time to do it for very little
Yes.
return on
Yes.
investment.
Yes.
There. So I love that you met somebody in the wild, as they say these days.
It was great. It was perfect.
Good. I'm glad. So how did you figure out that you loved travel? What kind of was I know you went on your first international trip, but why did you decide to do that?
So in 2015, my ex-husband's uncle was diagnosed with cancer, and I kind of was mostly his caretaker. I worked from home a lot. We took him to Houston to get chemo and that sort of thing. He passed away in the beginning of 2016. He was very young. He was a year younger than my mother. So at the time, I decided that I was going to take my mom. He passed away. I said, life is too short. This is just this. I mean, this happened, and in 6 months he was gone. And so I promised my mom, I'm an only child. I promised my mom I'm going to take her somewhere every year. I don't care where it is. And so that year, 2016, we went as a family. I was still married, and my kids and my mom, and we went to Hawaii, which was the first time I really had taken her anywhere to kind of travel. And it just kind of sparked from there. And then I had a niece going through cancer. So 2017, we took a cruise honoring her 1 year of being in remission. So we did that. And then 2018 came around, and that's when I decided I want to go somewhere. So it was me and my mom and my daughter and my mother-in-law that took a cruise out of Barcelona, Spain. And it was just awesome. So I discovered that kind of because I wanted to promise my mom to go somewhere. And once I did it, I was like, this exploring stuff is great. I love this, especially in 2018 when we started to see another side of the world that's so much older and so much cooler.
Sure. And then 2020 comes and you have to put a kibosh on those plans for a little bit.
I did. Well, 2018, and my daughter had not left the country at that time either, and neither had my mom. So my ex-mother-in-law had, but my mom and my daughter and I had not. So we're on this cruise. After this cruise, my daughter moves to Ireland.
Oh, wow.
And she still lives there 6 years later.
Wow. Good for her.
So she moved to Ireland, and she's traveled the world now. She's been everywhere, but that was our first time for all of us to kind of leave the country. And she's got a great adventurous spirit. She loves to travel, and she's all over Europe and everywhere. So it's wonderful, but it just gave me, it's one of those things that sets your soul on fire. So I'm like, I have to keep doing this. I have to find a way. And even this trip that we're taking coming up, I plan a year in advance. I'm sure people get sick of hearing about it, but I'm like,
Too bad.
I have to plan a year in advance so I can make payments and, do it as frugally as possible and take my mom. And so this time we're with my cousin and then some friends as well. So it's just going to be a great time.
But your mom's with you.
Yes.
Fabulous.
I have to take her somewhere.
I love it. I love it so much. My mom and my parents, I was very fortunate that when I was younger, I got to go to some really cool places. My parents made the effort to every couple of years take us somewhere, and they were able to afford to do that. So when I was a senior in high school, my grandfather took our entire family to Italy, which is where they're from. So there were 18 of us that were able to go. And it was just the trip of a lifetime. I mean, I've been back to Italy since, but nothing will top that first experience and doing it the way that we did. And it's such a special thing, especially when you can do it with family. And now, that I've got the travel bug in a way that the rest of my family doesn't really understand. They're like, okay, you go do that. But I kind of have been pulling my mom along with me a little bit on some of the trips, and it's been really fun. So last year she came to Kenya with me, which was fabulous, and we had a great time. And then she's Europe for the summer. She's meeting me at the end of the summer in Greece. So yeah, it is really special to do that as mother and daughter, I think.
It is.
And it's cool that you're kind of sandwiched. You're doing it with your mom and you're doing it with your daughter.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So is your daughter on this trip?
No, she's not on this trip.
Couldn't make this
I'm
one.
actually going to visit her at the end of the year with my boyfriend
Nice.
in Ireland. So we'll go over there.
Fun. What part of Ireland?
She lives in Dublin.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And why Ireland?
She went from from college to Boston, and she worked for a bank. She's an auditor, and they asked her to move, and she's like, sure. So
good for her.
She did.
Truly. Take that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So you have this book, and you also have a coaching business.
I do.
So how did the coaching business come about? Was it born out of this experience with your identity? And what do you do for other women?
So
It may not be just women.
Well, so far it has been women.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk to men. And a couple of times when I spoke, a couple of men were in the audience, but it is predominantly for women. And the book kind of sparked a lot of that additional, okay, I'm going to continue to help women, and then I'm going to write my own book, and then I'm going to, so now I'm part of another collaborative book that comes out in January,
Cool.
And I'm in the middle of writing my own. And then I started the coaching thing, one-on-one coaching, and then podcast interviews or speaking to folks. And so it just kind of has morphed, and it's in its infancy. So I'm just starting, just have a few clients that I'm working with now. I'm growing that and open to growing that as big as possible. But that's ultimately my goal, is I want to be able to one day leave corporate America, travel the world, speak to women and help them, help them get from a place that maybe I was to where I am now.
Yeah.
And feel that confidence, feel their identity, feel all the things.
Yeah. Do you think there's a space that needs to be dedicated to reaching women before they enter this period of their life and letting them know that they don't have to follow these steps and they do have options and they can make different choices? And even if they want to pursue, marriage and family immediately after high school or whatever, knowing that there are alternative ways to do it so that you don't lose yourself in the process?
Yes, that's, as I was saying earlier, how I talk to people and tell them if it's kayaking, if it's knitting, whatever it is, keep doing that. Don't run off and get married and just stop. Keep doing that, especially if that's part of your identity. I do have one friend, she goes to knitting every Monday night with a group. That's her thing, but she's done it for a really long time. She's married and she does that. So whatever it is, the friends that are with me, we like to kayak. So that's their thing. We would spend summers kayaking a lot. And so whatever it is, keep that thing about yourself so that you're not losing yourself in someone else. And also part of that is, the one thing that I realized was you cannot expect someone else to make you happy. And I think I did that. That was probably one of my downfalls in my marriage, was whatever he did or did not do affected my mood or affected my happiness. And it should never be that way. It should come within you. You should be happy with yourself and inside yourself. You can't expect someone else, because we're human. We're all going to make mistakes. We're going to fail. He failed. I failed. We're all going to fail each other. We're not going to live up to the expectations that someone places on us. So it's just, you're setting yourself up for failure when you do that. Learn to be happy inside yourself. And if you don't know who you are, if you're starting to get married or starting to raise a family, figure out who you are on your own, by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is that's the key, is that you are responsible for your own happiness. And in turn, you cannot be responsible for somebody else's. So that's a losing game before you even start.
Yep.
I think there's so much pressure put on women, specifically mothers, to perform to a certain capacity. And there's so much also contradicting information out there, right? And so with the access that we all have in the internet, and there's wonderful things about it, and there's wonderful connection through it, but there is also just this standard that I feel that women are never going to live up to, because it's not realistic. And so I think part of the problem, and I have to disclaimer this, I am not a mother. This is just observation. But I feel like women they slide into this role of motherhood, and they are constantly watched and picked apart. And you're not doing it right, or you should be doing it this way, or, you're spending too much time with your kids. You're not spending enough time with your kids, that your kids should be here. And so I think it's very easy for women to slip into or to lose themselves because not only are you responsible for these beings in front of you that are literally your life's blood, but then you have all of the peanut gallery outside having opinions and having something to say about it. And so, how are women supposed to keep themselves in the midst of this when everybody around them is saying, you're not good enough, you're not doing it right?
It's very hard. And as a mom, I can say that because you'll have the moms that stay home. Well, why don't you stay home? Or the moms that work, you're working too much, or, you're not at your kids' practice, or you're at every event. Maybe you're hovering, maybe you're too much. You are scrutinized for every single thing, or you're letting them eat that. Oh my gosh. Or you're letting them drink, or, oh, they're on social media, or they're, all the things. And, the one thing I tell people is there is no guidebook. There is no, here's the manual, this is how you do it. There is no rhyme or reason. I've even told my kids this before, in that, I got married very young. I'm not suggesting that you go do that. Neither of them are married currently. I don't have grandchildren or anything, and that's okay. The key is I want them to be happy, whatever that looks like. If they never get married, that's fine. Whatever they want to do, I want them to be happy. And so, in the same way that there is no motherhood guidebook, there's no guidebook when you're starting off like that either. Get married, don't get married, whatever, So I think that there are a lot of people that it's judgy. I guess that's the word that my daughter would say. That's judgy, and so you can't be judgy. If you're doing it this way, that's great. That's your path. That's your journey. That's the way you want to raise your kids. Yeah. But we need to not only give ourselves a lot of grace in that area, but give grace to the other women. If she stays at home, good for her. If she wants to work or she wants to volunteer, good for her too. Be a cheerleader for the other women. Don't tear other women down for whatever it is that they're doing or not doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think across the board too, right? Because, it can be hard sometimes being the only single person in the room or the childless person in the room, right? Where it's like, well, you don't know what it's like. No, I don't know, but I have my own things as well. And so we have to stop comparing our struggles and our burdens, right? Because it gets us nowhere. Yeah. And, I think it's important that as women especially, we recognize in each other the value and dignity that we all hold just as beings, as being women, period, end. No other attachments necessary.
I agree.
Yeah. So you are working on another collaborative book, you said. So what is that about?
So it is called Lead with Love. We're just now starting, but it's global. So there are people from the U.S., people from Australia. We have some from the Netherlands, and so it'll be 30 women in this group. So I'm excited. It's a brand new project. We haven't even met on our first meeting yet, so I'm excited about that. But it's called Lead with Love.
Amazing. How do you get connected with that? I mean, you've done 2 now, so how do you kind of even get connected to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be part of this collaborative space?
Well, kind of like I met you on this whole be a guest, find a guest, that sort of thing. And so you find people that, be on my podcast, be a part of my book or whatever. And if something speaks to you or speaks to your heart, it's kind of like when you're volunteering or something. If you're passionate about homeless or animals or whatever, if something speaks to your heart, then that's what you should be doing. Yeah. So, and I loved the title. I loved what she had to say. And I was like, Lead with Love. I like this. So
yeah,
I decided to be a part of that project.
Good for you. And you're writing your own book.
I am.
Your story, what is that looking like?
I've gone back and forth with that because in the collaborative book that I wrote in, it was kind of a snip. It's kind of a micro story. Mm-hmm. It does give more than just the time that I was divorced. I talk a little bit about, sexual abuse as a young teen and things like that I've been through in that story. But I think when I write my own book, it will just be an addition to that. It will be the full version of all of that. And I don't know if I'll write it into devotional format. I'm not quite sure just yet. I'm in the process of doing that. I've gotten about halfway through that, but I think it will be more of add-on, I guess you could say, to more of my story. And then kind of telling people, here's the steps you can take, or here's the things that you can do to not be in that predicament, not be stuck.
Yeah. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Well, I love it. I love your journey. I love the process. I love your dreams to be traveling the world, helping women. Yeah. And I think that you are well on your way to making that a reality. So where would your dream place be to kind of speak, I guess, location wise?
I want to go everywhere.
That's my answer too. I'm always like, pick one place.
Like,
never.
No. Last year when we spent 2.5 weeks in Italy, from Naples all the way to Milan and Rome and Tuscany, I would go back to Italy in a heartbeat and speak to women. Anywhere, sky's the limit. I would love to go to Africa. I would love to go to Bora Bora. Anywhere that there is a need, I want to be there.
Awesome. So I do have one question that I ask everybody at the end of each episode, which is, through the lens of your experience, what does compassion mean to you?
I think it means being open-minded. I think that you have to, when you're having compassion, not everything is going to look like you. Not everything is going to look like the life that you have. But extending grace and love, no matter who it is, no matter what it is, whether it's, a woman in a bad situation, or a homeless person, or the wealthy woman that's your boss's wife, or whatever it is. I think compassion to me is just being open-minded, just loving everyone the way that they are.
Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you because you have a wonderful vacation to get to, and I hope you have the best time. It sounds like you're going to some lovely places. Have you been to any of the places you are going before?
The only place I've been is Edinburgh, and we were just there for a night to catch a train to Inverness. So that's the only place that I've actually
So you have a little bit more time there. Yeah. Wonderful. How long is your cruise for?
12 days.
12 days. Fantastic. I'm only a little bit jealous.
Come with us.
Let me know when the next one is.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.